UFC Fight Night Austin, Dariush versus Tsarukyan takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Veronica versus Jamey-Lyn Horth, which is now, of course, Veronica Hardy versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. Congratulations, Dan Hardy. Congratulations, Dan Hardy. I am going to be going against Veronica Hardy here, and I'm going to be going with Jamey-Lyn Horth. There's not really much to tell between the two of them. In Veronica Macedo's last fight, fair play, she did win against Juliana Miller, but I rewatched that fight just to sort of remind myself of what happened there. Juliana Miller has never trained martial arts before in her entire life. There's no way you can convince me she has. I know she won the Ultimate Fighter as a female, but as she's never set foot in an MMA gym in her life. So winning by decision and edging out the rounds based on damage and strikes and control time doesn't mean much to me. Now, Jamey-Lyn Horth is no better herself. However, she's going to have that post-30-year-old female rage that she's going to bring into this fight. And she's a lot larger than Veronica Hardy as well. She's a big flyweight. I think she's going to have a big physicality advantage. And I think that might be what it comes down to. She's got the reach as well. There's not really much to go off of here in terms of like the two technical abilities. Maybe you could say Veronica Hardy is a little bit more technical out of the two of them, but I just think I'm going to go with physicality here for Jamey-Lyn Horth. Let's be honest, it's going to be a decision anyways, most likely. Likely going to be a 29-28. I'm going to go with the larger of the two of them and the one that's carrying more middle-aged rage into this fight. So I'm going with Jamey-Lyn Horth. We move on. Up the card, Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. You know what? I'm going with Wellington Turman. I used to see Wellington Turman as a bit of a guy who couldn't really strike, but he had good jiu-jitsu, and that's a lot of the time what I used to base a lot of my predictions for his fights based on, because he did have good jiu-jitsu, but his striking just wasn't quite there. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't quite there. In his last fight with Randy Brown, he arguably could have won. And Randy Brown is good if you don't KO him. You know what I mean? Like, he's a bit chinny here and there, and he can be KO'd, but if you don't KO him, you know, you got a solid chance. You're in for a really tough night against Randy Brown because he's a tricky, rangy fighter. And in my opinion, as he proved in his own fight with Jared Gooden, even with a broken toe, he's just a better version of Jared Gooden, in my opinion. Way rangier, way more dangerous. And Wellington Turman, I'm going to say this. Rewatched a fight with him and Randy Brown. Alex Pereira's working wonders with him in terms of his striking. In that fight with Randy Brown, he looked like Alex Pereira out there. Not quite the same level, I absolutely understand, but the style that he was fighting with was like a really good Alex Pereira imitation that he had going on. And I think if he spends more time with Pereira, which he has now, and he's now adjusted to the welterweight division, and he went to a decision in his last fight, he's got given another chance here, I reckon he can beat Jared Gooden. I really like the improvements in his striking, and I think he's the more improving fighter out of the two of these guys. 27 years of age, still very young in his career. I'm going to go with Wellington Turman. Big dude as well, same as Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden has a bit of a reach advantage, but again, I really liked the striking improvements that we saw from Wellington Turman. If you can nearly beat Randy Brown and arguably beat him, I reckon you can beat Jared Gooden doing a similar thing. So I'm going to go Wellington Turman gets this one done. We move on. Up the card, Rodolfo Bellato versus Ihor Poteria. I'm going to go with Rodolfo Bellato. Ihor Poteria just doesn't have a really good win in his career. Something that I've noticed from him, you know, he lost to Ulberg in his last fight, got really badly finished by him, got really badly finished by Nikolai Negumereanu, but did have a bit of a scrap with him before that, but at the same time, got finished by Nikolai Negumereanu, beat Shogun Rua, but that was basically like, here, Ihor Poteria, get a free win against this fat old man. All respect to Shogun Rua deserved, of course, but you know what I'm saying? It was basically the UFC saying, right, we got this young prospect, let's just end Shogun Rua, is basically what they were doing there. And he ended up finishing Shogun. Either way, I don't think he's that good, and I was watching back some of Rodolfo Bellato's fights. Dude, he's a tank. He's a tank, dude. I was watching back his Contender Series performances. He was holding his own against Vitor Petrino in their first fight that they had. Swallowed a hair. In their first fight they had, he went for a spinning back fist, And as he like span all the way round and missed it, Petrino caught him right on the temple and he just sort of went to sleep. But he was scrapping with Petrino. And there were moments in that fight where he was coming forward. And although he was bloody and beaten up a little bit, he was coming forward and Petrino was like, God, what have I got to hit this guy with to get him out of there? This guy's tough. And he is really tough. Because even in his second appearance on the Contender Series, he went up against a Dagestani-looking dude who was very good himself. And again, he looked really good in that fight. He fought an undefeated Dagestani who was 6-0 at the time, 27 years of age. Dagestan, Russia, great wrestler, good striking by the looks of him as well because he was throwing some nasty shots. And Bellato walked him down, kept the pressure on, took some big shots, kept going. And I think that's where he beats Ihor Poteria here. If Poteria can't finish him in the first round, I think it's going to get really worrying for him because I think Bellato's a tank and I think he's going to he's like Vettori with power. You know what I mean? He's a dangerous dude. I feel like he's going to walk down Poteria in the second or third round and get himself a TKO because he broke that Dagestani dude on the Contender Series and he has really good takedown defense, really strong hips, really good sprawls, and that allows him to keep his hands up, which is really, really good in the higher weight classes because you can get KO'd so easily. Lower weight classes, you can play that game of hands down at range a bit more, but in the higher weight classes, I like to see a guy keep their hands up a bit more, especially at light heavyweight. So, yeah. Rodolfo Bellato, I think he's going to do well, and I like his keeping his hands up, knows he can sprawl takedowns, don't think Poteria is going to shoot one anyway. I reckon Bellato breaks him in the second by TKO. We move on. Up the card, Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. I'm going to go Melquizael Costa. I know Steve Garcia is a big dude. He's actually surprised me a few times because just looking at him, I think, what a victim. Like, sometimes there is a part of that comes into it, right, guys? Like, I know it's, like, hard to say that's what you're predicting fights based on, but in the past, I've doubted Steve Garcia because he just looks like bitch. You know what I mean? I think he does. And he's proved me wrong. He beat Xiaolian Nodiembeke, had a bit of a tough time in round one, nearly got finished himself, and then came back with, like, I think body shots in round two that finished off Xiaolian Nodiembeke. And then he had a good performance against Chase Hooper, smoked him in one round, constantly knocking him down, lost before that to Mahashate. I'm going to go with Melquizael Costa. I just think he's a better striker. And he might not be as big, might not be as physical, but I think he's a better striker. I think he's more dynamic. And I think that this fight is going to take place on the feet because Costa's got a good takedown defense. And Steve Garcia, it's not like he's going to maul people out there. He might be able to get some takedowns, but I think even if he does, Melquizael Costa, dangerous, powerful. And I think he's going to give Steve Garcia some problems with his kicks at range because he has really nasty ones. And I was really impressed by his last performance. So I'm going to go with Melquizael Costa, getting this one done. Plus, he's 27, very young, going to be improving. We move on. Up the card, Drakkar Klose versus Joe Solecki. Again, this is a weird one because Drakkar Klose has sort of like disappeared from the MMA world over the past however many years it's been since he's been in the cage. I was wondering what kind of happened to him because he seemed like he had a little bit of momentum at one point. I'm going to go Drakkar Klose win him. I don't think Joe Solecki's all that good. Drakkar Klose, he doesn't destroy people, but he is technical. He has got good takedown defense. He's got good striking, good cardio. He just doesn't... He's not bad in any area. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, you know, he gets carried away like he did against Dariush and gets chinned. But if you really look back through Drakkar Klose's career, he lost to Dariush. Other than that, he beat Christos Giagos. He beat Bobby Green. He beat Lando Venata. Lost to David Tamer, which is an interesting one. I actually haven't even watched that fight, but it was in 2017, so we'll let it slip. I think I have watched it, but I don't remember it. Beat Mark Jacase, beat another guy in his debut. He's lost to no one but Dariush in the past 5 years. So I am going to go with Drakkar Klose. Although he hasn't been too active, I think he's going to do good here. And I don't think that Joe Solecki's all that good himself. Like, Joe Solecki just... I don't see what he does so well. Carl Deaton is not good. He was an old man that they brought in on short notice to lose, basically, is what they did with him. Gave him his opportunity as an older guy. He also beat Alex da Silva de Coelho. Not the greatest guy, but, you know, he got knocked down in that fight. I just don't see... When I watch back Joe Solecki's fights, I don't see a crazy level of talent. Whereas I think Drakkar Klose just does the basic stuff better than Joe Solecki. So I'm going to go Drakkar Klose 29-28 over Joe Solecki. We move on. Up the card, Zachary Reese versus Cody Brundage. Gotta go Zachary Reese here. Long, rangy middleweight, 6'3", 77 inches of reach. Dangerous dude for the middleweight division. He has showed some holes in his game in terms of keeping his hands down. But in his last fight on the Contender Series, if I remember correctly here, I'm actually going to double check this because I think he got a triangle off of his back after being taken down. Or was it an armbar? I think it was an armbar. I'm just going to double check it right now because that was the sort of thing I was concerned about for him because he had some TKOs, he had some offensive submissions, had an amateur career. Yeah, he got taken down and he got an armbar in his last fight, or maybe he got knocked off balance. I remember it on the Contender Series. Cody Brundage, I just don't think is good. And that's what a lot of these fight predictions come down to. I just don't think Brundage is that good. I don't think he's got too much heart. He milked the DQ against Jacob Malkoun. He was getting absolutely destroyed before that happened. Other than that, he lost to Cedric Dumas by basically just shelling up and accepting the loss, which was terrible to see because I don't even think Dumas is all that good. Cody Brundage just shelled up and gave in and didn't even do anything to try and win. And that's what you don't want to see. You know what I mean? Mikhail Alexeychuk destroyed him, finished him, reversed a position, beat him up on the ground. He beat Tresean Gore, but maybe Tresean Gore ain't all that good. So I just don't think Brundage has got this one in him. And then the fact is, if he would have lost that last fight and it wouldn't have been a DQ against Jacob Malkoun, he would have been cut from the UFC anyway. So I'm going to go Zachary Reese, undefeated, rangy, talented, submissions off his back. I think he can wrestle. I'm going to go with Zachary Reese here over Cody Brundage, getting himself a TKO in the second round. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. You know what? Everyone's picking Julia Avila here. And when I say everyone, I'm over-exaggerating. I'm saying that 76% of people are picking Julia Avila. And she is a favorite. I'm taking the underdog of Miesha Tate, to be honest with you. I know that she's old, and you can see it in the face. And, you know, she's getting up there, out of her prime. And all of that. And I get it. She's one of the older fighters. But at the end of the day, she went to a pretty close fight with Ketlen Vieira, who is one of the best women's bantamweights on the planet. You know what I mean? And she went to a pretty good fight with Lauren Murphy, who is one of the higher ranked women's flyweights as well. So I am not ready to say that Tate is absolutely awful and not able to compete in any way whatsoever. She actually outlanded Ketlen Vieira across 5 rounds in their main event that they had. And that was after, like, quite a bit of time off. But no, she beat Mariam Renault, finished her. I liked Miesha Tate's performance in hindsight. Now, I don't like any performance from women's MMA. I get that. But you got to take it with a pinch of salt. She's all right. And Julia Avila, in her last fight, just didn't impress. Did not impress me. You know, 2021 fought Julia Stoliarenko, who I know beat the legendary Molly McCann. Julia Avila, like, total striked her with positional control at times. Like, it wasn't really all that impressive. She's also quite old, along with Miesha Tate. She's also been inactive. She hasn't fought since 2021. Miesha Tate's been more active than her. Miesha Tate tried to fight in June against Mayra Bueno Silva. That fight didn't end up happening. So it's not like she's just wandering back in there. She wants to make a run right now. And I think she realizes that without Nunes, the women's bantamweight division is kind of wide open. I'm going to go Miesha Tate as an underdog, in all honesty. I'm going to take her to win by decision. We move on. Up the card, Clay Guida versus Joaquim Silva. Sorry, Clay. I like Clay Guida, but man, I got to go Joaquim Silva. Dangerous, powerful, good jiu-jitsu. I think that's going to be the problem here for Clay Guida. It seems like if you have finishing ability, you beat Clay Guida. And if you don't have finishing ability, Guida can maybe grind out a decision against you. And that seems to be what it comes down to a lot of the time. Rafa Garcia really did do a number on Clay Guida in his last fight. Did a lot of damage to him. Clay Guida's back in there again after all that damage. Joaquim Silva had Arman Tsarukyan on skates. I don't want to spoil who I'm picking in the main event, but let's just say if Guida wins this one on the prelims, my main event pick might change. Joaquim Silva's pretty good. Pretty dangerous. Fought great opponents. Had a good fight with Arman Tsarukyan. Jesse Bronson, I get it. Awful, I know. Got KO'd by Ricky Glenn, which is not a good look whatsoever either. But I do think Joaquim Silva, skill-wise, maybe his chin does let him down. But I don't think Guida's going to KO him. And I think skill-wise, when it comes to the technical aspects of MMA, I think that Joaquim Silva is actually one of the better fighters at lightweight outside the rankings. I'm not saying he's one of the best in the world, but outside the rankings, he's one of the better ones. He just doesn't have those physical attributes that like a Gaethje has that's at the top of the division. You know what I mean? Sometimes fighters just all have the same skill level, and certain ones are just built to be top contenders. Joaquim Silva doesn't quite seem to be that, but I don't think Guida's going to chin him. So I'm going to go with Joaquim Silva beating Guida, who, you know, Scott Holtzman fight, awful. Claudio Puelles subbed him in a round. Like, I'm going to have to go against Clay Guida, but good luck to him. I'm rooting for him. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Beneil Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I think everyone's kind of going the same way here, and that is in the direction of Beneil Soriano. I actually thought when Soriano first came up in the UFC, I thought he was actually kind of talented, to be honest with you. And I've actually been kind of let down by how his career has ended up. I saw him as like a tank in that division that was going to knock out a bunch of people and go quite far. But unfortunately for him, he ran into the Roman Kopylov, you know what I mean? And that was a big problem for him. And, you know, he held in there, but Kopylov eventually broke him down and finished him in the second round. It is what it is. Kopylov's an absolute monster. He's Chase Hooper with testosterone. You're going to run into those fighters. He arguably outdamaged Nick Maximov. I rewatched that fight. Maximov got a lot of takedowns on him, but he arguably outdamaged Nick Maximov in that fight. And if it's damage over control, you should arguably go Beneil Soriano there. Whooped up Dalchalungi and Bula. Finished him. I'm going to go Beneil Soriano. I just don't think Dustin Stoltzfus is all that good. Kind of got lucky with the Joe Pyfer arm break after a takedown. He's not terrible. Don't get me wrong. He's not terrible. I just don't see the athleticism in him. I don't see knockout power. And in the higher weight classes, I like a bit of finishing ability. So I'm going to go with Beneil Soriano. Finishing ability in his favor. Don't see him getting taken down too much. And Stoltzfus is coming off a KO loss in 2022 September. So he's been out for a long time. And the last time he fought, he got smoked in a round by Abus Magomedov in the first 20 seconds. So I'm going to go with Beneil Soriano. And Stoltzfus struggled with like a welterweight move up Dwight Grant. So, yeah, I'm going with Beneil Soriano. I reckon he'll get a KO in the second round. Or late in the first. I'm farting. Ha! Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum over Sean Brady. Sean Brady's an interesting one because he was undefeated and he was very, very good. And he did have some good wins, but his career has kind of aged quite poorly. Now, I know losing to Beneil in hindsight's not that bad because Belal's now a top contender, beat Gilbert Burns on short notice, one-armed Gilbert Burns. Need to mention that. But at the same time, it's not like Belal's absolute trash like we kind of thought he was, you know what I mean? Because his fight style's not the best to look at. Sometimes those fight styles just go far in the game, and it doesn't really matter how good you look dynamically or athletically. If it works, you know? But I didn't like what I saw in the Belal Muhammad fight. Not just that you got TKO'd by pillow hands Belal. It's not about that. He was doing good, yeah. He was actually doing pretty good in that fight. And then Belal, no joke, stung him once with a good shot. I don't even think he wobbled Brady that badly. Otherwise, Brady would have gone down to it. Stung him once with a good shot, disorientated him, minorly wobbled him. He wasn't wobbled, you guys. He was just wobbled. And Brady just didn't do anything to fix his position. And I know that it comes down to like, well, you know, you've never been in the cage, you don't know what it's like. But I know what other fighters do when they get hit by shots. And even if they go down swinging. You know what I mean? And for Brady, as an undefeated guy, to taste defeat like that, it wasn't the best to see from him. You know, I'm sure he had injuries and this and that, but I just thought his takedowns were obvious, way out in the open. And when he got clipped once, he just sort of shut down and didn't throw anything back, even though it looked like he was kind of still in there. It was a weird one, a weird situation. Arguably didn't beat Michael Chiesa on damage, but, you know, he had enough control time in the back take, which made it his fight, which I don't mind. I'm not saying it's a robbery. The Jake Matthews fight, he got the takedown in the third and got the submission with a guillotine, one-armed guillotine. Impressive, but again, Jake Matthews, we sort of rated him for the win over Fialho, and then after that, it's just been like, what's happened to Jake Matthews? I'm going to go with Kelvin. I think Kelvin's good, and he's been chucking around middleweights and holding his own in the grappling against middleweights. I don't think he's going to get ragdolled by Sean Brady in any way. And I think if this is on the feet, I just like the boxing, durability, toughness, and finishing ability of Kelvin Gastelum way more than I do of Sean Brady. So I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum getting this one done by TKO in the second or third round. I really liked his style against Chris Curtis as well. Really liked his style. The low kicks, the in and out movement, very Cejudo-ish. Liked it. So I think he'll do well here. Kelvin Gastelum by TKO. We move on. Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo. I'm going Rob Font first round KO in the first 2 minutes. I've doubted Rob Font a lot. I was actually originally picking Rob Font against Adrian Yanez, but for some reason I rewatched a Marlon Vera fight and I just couldn't help but not pick him to win his next fight after that. Heaven forbid, you know what I mean? I literally saw the Vera fight and I was like, God, I had Rob Font winning, but I don't know if anyone can recover from that, you know? But then Calvin Kattar, maybe it's a New England cartel thing. The more CTE, the better. Calvin Kattar against Holloway, I literally said there's no way he comes back from that. Chikedzi's going to beat him. Comes back and beats Chikedzi. Rob Font's got momentum. I think Figueiredo's power is not going to translate as well up a division. And Font has got some wicked long arms. 71.5 inches of reach at bantamweight, which is pretty insane. Figueiredo's got long arms as well, 68-inch reach, but Font is taller. He's going to be punching straight from the shoulder. Figueiredo's got to try and scope upwards with his shots, which is going to take some range away from it. I just think Figueiredo's open to have his face jabbed off. And if Font gets his jab going and it's landing early, normally Font gets his jab going in like round 2, he starts to pick it up. Round 3. If he starts landing it early in the first, you saw what happened against Adrian Yanez. Nasty shots are following up if he's comfortable enough to start throwing them after landing his jab. And Figueiredo, striking defense-wise, it worked at flyweight because he's big, he's strong, he could take their power. He's had some tough fights recently. Had some injuries, been TKO'd-ish with his eye being destroyed by Moreno, and he got choked out as well, and he had one after being dropped by a jab. See what I mean? I just don't like it for Figueiredo. I think he needed size to win, if you know what I'm saying. He needed size to win, and I think if that gets taken away from him here, I'm going to go against Figueiredo. I don't see him taking down Rob Font and dominating him there. I don't think he's big enough. And I think Font's going to jab him up. And Figueiredo got stung a lot on the chin with his arms down and his head way up in the air. I'm going to go Rob Font. I think he's going to catch Figueiredo and put him away in the first 2 minutes. And I think Figueiredo might retire. Or maybe he'll go back down to flyweight and say, you know what, I beat Pantoja. Moreno's not champ. Maybe I could get one win and become a champ. You never know. I'm going to go with Rob Font, though, getting that one done. We move on. Up the card, Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green. I'm going to go Jalen Turner, you know. I'm going to go Jalen Turner. I like Bobby Green. I just think he's going to be fighting from behind. And when Bobby Green is fighting from behind, it's a little bit of a different fight for him. Hear me out. He's very good. He either keeps up equal or he just wins and he stays ahead and eventually he finishes you or he dominates you by decision by peppering you and staying ahead. I don't think he can finish Jalen Turner by TKO. I don't think so. And I think if Jalen Turner took this fight on short notice, it means he's in shape ready for a fight. And he did say something to point out. He did say that he was looking for a fight in December when he lost his fight to Dan Hooker. I remember his comeback date that he had in mind was to return in December, 6 months from now. He fought in July, UFC 290. Wanted to fight in December. So my opinion is the reason why Jalen Turner's took this fight and thinks he can make weight for it is because he eyed up. There's a massive card. There's 2 massive lightweight bouts against guys ranked above me. I'll rather take that rather than take some next up-and-comer down the rankings that's not going to get me anything. So I think he's been ready. It's a 3-rounder, which benefits him as well. 6-inch reach advantage. Green doesn't do the best when he doesn't have a reach advantage. Just going to keep it real. Doesn't do the best when he doesn't have it. He likes to have the reach on opponents. And I just think Jalen Turner does better. Better dynamic moves. He's more versatile. That's the word I was looking for there. He's more versatile. He'll chop low. He'll front kick the body. He'll kick the head. Green don't do that. He boxes. And I think Jalen can figure that out. And Jalen's fights, even when people are trying to take him down, he does very well. People not trying to take him down? I think he was surprised that Dan Hooker didn't roll over and go away like he wanted him to in that fight, in all honesty. I think he hurt Dan Hooker. He realized it. He realized he was beating him up. Dan Hooker didn't go anywhere. And Jalen started kind of worrying about it. And it sort of he overwhelmed him a little bit. I don't think Green's going to be Dan hookering his way forward, walking into shots and swinging and stepping through and swinging with his big shots. He's going to try and stay at range and pick. And I think Jamey-Lyn's going to chew up his leg, chew up his body, and get himself either a decision win or a TKO. I'll say it will be a decision win, 30-27. Bobby Green being slightly behind on numbers in terms of damage. We move on. Up the card, Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. I'm going Arman Tsarukyan. I'm going with Arman Tsarukyan. I think he's tricky for Beneil Dariush. I don't know why I picked Dariush to beat Oliveira. You know what it is? Sometimes when you see a fighter win so much and then they randomly lose, and they're older, you're like, well, this is the end. And I did it for Oliveira. I feel like I'm doing it for Dariush now. But emotionally, I kind of picked against Oliveira in that last fight. I hate to admit it. I wanted Oliveira to win, but I couldn't face picking him and having him lose in a way. And I saw it as a 50-50 because I didn't know what Oliveira was going to return. Oliveira still got it. I get it. I just don't think Dariush is all that. Gamrot fight, he stuffed the takedowns. He has really good takedown defense. I just think Arman is way better on the feet than Gamrot. And I think him being short here is going to benefit him quite a bit because Dariush does a lot of ducking his head and throwing over the top. And Arman is really short for the division. You know, he's going to be 2 inches shorter here. He's got a longer reach at that height as well. And I think that can benefit him against Dariush. I think he wins the leg kick battle. I think he can go to the body well. I think if he needs to back up Dariush, he can throw that axe kick out there without much risk. I reckon Arman Tsarukyan's going to get this one done. And I'm going to say he gets it done. You know what? Switch kick to the body. 3rd round, 4th round TKO. I'm going to go against Beneil Dariush. I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan. Dariush coming off a KO loss. Arman Tsarukyan gets this one done. TKO. I think his wrestling is good enough to keep it on the feet. He kept it up with Mateusz Gamrot. And you got to remember with Arman, he's 27. And I know a lot of the time after the Joaquim Silva fight, I was thinking to myself, God, you know, he got rocked. I don't see him doing too well up the division. But if you really just watch what Arman is doing, he does everything very well. He got clipped by a perfect shot from Joaquim Silva, who is a dangerous power puncher. So I'm going to go Arman Tsarukyan because outside of that one punch, he was handling Joaquim Silva pretty easily. Before that, you know, he beat Damir Ismagulov pretty handedly, just absolutely ragdolled him. I know Damir didn't end up being that amazing anyway, but just showed that he could do the wrestling stuff as well. I still think he beat Gamrot in that fight, damage over control. Beat Joel Alvarez like he owed him money. Dominated him, and I didn't think he was going to because I thought Joel Alvarez was a beast. I just think if it gets into the later rounds, who's more likely to be carrying an injury into this camp? Dariush. Who's more likely to receive an injury in the middle of this fight? Dariush. Who's more likely to be able to push when they need to in the later rounds? I feel like Arman Tsarukyan. So the fact that this is a 5-rounder benefits Arman, I think, and he can be a bit more patient, and I think he can pick at Dariush, annoy him, frustrate him, hurt him to the body and legs, break him down, and I think he beats him by TKO in the 4th round. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.